Hey guys, this is Jennifer from the Shooter's Mindset. We are live with episode 338. We have our co-hosts. Greg, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Going well. How about we've also got Paul McCoy, one of our co-hosts. How are you doing?
Doing good. Getting hot down here in Alabama, though.
It's getting a little warm in the South. You're right.
Warm.
A little warm. And of course, our guest of the hour tonight is Andy Hawkins. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well. So for anybody that's not familiar with you, let's just go ahead and get the show started off by you telling us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into shooting, how you got to be sitting here.
Well, I'm Andy Hawkins. I own a company called Hawkins Precision. Many of you may know it. We're a manufacturer of firearms components. So we just make a whole bunch of stuff for firearms, mostly bolt action rifles. I started the company in like 2011, just kind of to service gunsmiths. But I guess to answer your actual question, I started shooting as a kid. Grew up in Colorado, still live in Colorado. And we went hunting every year, and it was always a tradition to sight in your rifle and get ready and go hunting. So that's kind of where the passion for shooting came from. And then I started shooting, trying to get more distance out of my gun. A lot of missed opportunities, animals that were too far to shoot at. So that kind of began the process. So that's kind of how I got into that. But,
So how old were you when you got your first deer or elk or whatever you got up there?
I was probably about 15 years old. When I first started hunting in Colorado, you had to be 14 to hunt. I don't think I was successful the first year. I think I was successful the second year. So with a mule deer. I don't know how old I was the first time I shot an elk. I was probably 17, 18 years old, somewhere in there.
That's pretty cool. I've always wanted to hunt elk. I'm not a big hunter, but I would love to go hunt elk. They're a very smart animal. When you killed an elk, you've accomplished something. They're pretty smart.
Well, or you got really lucky. Sometimes you cross paths with them, but
so
they are clever.
So you've told me this story, but tell me how Hawkins Precision got started, because it was not the story I expected to hear at all. So tell us a little bit how all that got fired off.
Okay. I want to say in 2011, I was running my now business partner's machine shop. It was a job shop. We worked on medical devices, and they actually own a medical testing company that tests orthopedic devices. So they're a third-party tester for basically anything that goes in a human body surgically. So I was running their machine shop, making fixtures and prototype medical devices and whatever else. And I wanted to build a custom rifle. I kind of wanted to do the gunsmithing and kind of do the whole process from beginning to end. But as a machinist, I kind of started with parts. So I bought a barrel and I made a muzzle brake to go on the barrel. And I started making fixturing to true up an action and chamber the barrel and do all that myself. Well, a good friend of mine for a long time, he was a friend of my dad's. We'd go shoot at his property. He owns an engraving business, and he engraves barrels for a local gunsmith, probably at least a couple gunsmiths, but a local guy named Kevin Weaver, Weaver Rifles, if you guys have ever heard of him. Well, anyways, he found out about this project and told Kevin Weaver, hey, I got a local source for some parts for some guns. So he calls me up and he says, hey, Andy, why don't you call Kevin? And he wants to buy some stuff from you. And I'm like, man, nobody's even seen my work. It was really just kind of a referral based on who I was and what I did. So I called Kevin and talked to him, and he said, hey, I'd just trade you gunsmithing for some parts because I need some muzzle brakes. So I stopped in. He saw my muzzle brake, didn't want that specific muzzle brake, wanted a different muzzle brake that he couldn't get a low enough quantity of them in order to make it work. You know, somebody told him he had to buy 100 or 200 of them or whatever. And I was like, I'll make like 15 or 20 of them. So I went to go run it through my job, which, I was running a machine shop. So I was like, well, we'll just bring this in as work for the shop. They were like, well, we don't really, at the time, my business partners weren't into guns at all. and or at least not really. Dawn, her dad was into guns. So anyways, I'm going to drag this story out way too long, but they weren't certain about liabilities and what we needed to do. So they're like, why don't you just do it on the side? So I started making parts for Kevin in trade for some gunsmithing rather than money. And got my gun built. And then next thing you know, I had some referrals and the ball started rolling. So
I think most of these businesses formed out of necessity. Like most of the people that have a gun business that I talk to that are competitive shooters, it's because like they wanted to build something of their own. So they started doing it and then, oh, well, I'll sell them. You know, it kind of snowballs out of necessity.
Yeah. And that's kind of how this went. Most everything that I made was somebody was having a supply chain issue. They needed a product. And so I started making it. So we kind of ran the company for about 3 years like that. And then finally I got a really big order that there's no way I could do evenings and weekends and whatever. So we figured out all the liability stuff and brought it in to their shop, just kind of as a side job. It really just kind of grew from there. So we partnered up, we're 50-50 on it, and they're business people and I'm a machinist and a product developer. So it works out really well. So that's kind of where we're at now. So we started going to trade shows and doing the normal business stuff. And for a long time, they did all of the manufacturing in their machine shop. And I did all the product development. Sorry, my kids are walking in the door. So,
That's all right.
So we ran the business for a really long time. And then a few years ago, we started buying equipment and hiring people and, bringing it all in-house and under our own roof.
So how many machines and employees and products do you guys currently have?
I want to say we have 10 machines. Last count, I think we had about 17 people. Sorry, that we're growing pretty quick. So that number's, I have a hard time keeping that stuff straight.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, we run 2 shifts right now. And yeah, we're pretty busy. So we got a lot of stuff going on. The firearms industry has been really crazy. Demand's been very high.
Yeah, I've heard rumors about that.
Are you having supply chain issues getting components and things to build what you're needing to build?
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Are you having supply chain issues? I know like nationwide, there's been supply chain issues everywhere. I'm in the medical field, so I know medical is having supply chain issues all around, but just getting raw components even to build things is difficult right now. So are y'all feeling that at all?
Yeah, we are. Material lead times went from, I want to say next week to next month in a lot of cases. So we have to buy a lot more material like earlier in order to plan ahead on it. The lead times just keep kind of growing on that stuff. We've had some supply chain issues with screws and things like that for holding on scope ring caps and hardware pieces. So as those things arise, we just up our order quantities and move on. So springs, that's a big one, like follower springs for Remington, make follower springs. Remington kind of, I don't know if where they're officially at through their bankruptcy or whatever. It's been tough to get those. So. But.
Well, tell us, I know you've won a match or two, so tell us a little bit about the shooting part of what you've done in the last 10 years.
Well, I don't think I've never won a 2-day national level match. I've won a lot of club matches. And
okay.
I did win a match in Sweden in the Viking Rifle Series a few years ago. I don't shoot as much as a lot of people do. I think I hit about 4 to 7 matches a year. I shoot a lot of club matches still. I really enjoy club matches. I feel like it's nice. It's easy. I can sleep in my own bed and go shoot and come home. It's just fun. I can not be at work while I'm at a club match, but I do still shoot probably 4 to 5 or 6 2-day PRS matches a year. So
Yeah, those 1-day matches they're half the match, but they're about 25% of the work. You know, you just
yes,
you can't put numbers to it, but there's almost no work involved in getting ready to go to a 1-day match, and there's almost no end to the work involved in getting ready to go to a 2-day match.
yeah, the math doesn't really work out. I feel like the fun level on a 1-day match can be really high sometimes too. Whereas on 2-day matches, they can get pretty stressful, you know, with the travel and different environment, and whatever.
Yeah, my body always held up a lot better for 1-day matches. I always did pretty well in the 1-day matches, and you know, I'd get up on Sunday morning at a PRS match. I feel like I'd been in a car wreck, and thought it was just me, and it's not just me. There's a lot of people get up out of bed on Sunday morning and feel like, you know, they wonder if they're going to be able to make it to the truck. So it's tough. It's tougher than people I think it is, and it's certainly harder as you get older. These guys that are 25 years old have no idea what it takes to be competitive at, you know, 50 years of age. So
I'm not there
they
yet.
need to respect their elders is what I'm saying.
It is definitely more challenging, a 2-day match, on a lot of different areas. Like, it's difficult to maintain the physicality of it. Like you said, 2 days worth, you wake up Sunday morning, everything hurts and you have to keep going, as well as, I mean, it's hard just to keep it together mentally and shooting wise. A lot of people can have one good day shooting, but to have 2 in a row, the winds change, the weather changes, conditions change, everything can be different. So a 2-day match is very different. I think a 1-day is so much more relaxing in a way. It's a little easier to just kind of go and enjoy it, knowing that, you know, at the end of the day, I'm going to go home and crash and not have to go home and focus for tomorrow, you know?
Yeah, go home, take care of your gun, get ready for tomorrow, get all the dust out of everything. And
So are you running the club series up there where you're at?
no, I'm not running it. We rotate match directors at our local club. So we've got, I don't know, 10 or 12 guys that are kind of signed up. Every month we have a different guy running it. So it's I was very heavily involved a few years ago. Now I kind of show up and shoot and put in some input here and there, but we run a match in July, I think. Nick Depperschmidt and I, he's our marketing guy. Anybody who knows Nick. So we run a match, him and I run one once a year. So other than that, we've got a bunch of guys that, you know, we kind of have like a unofficial board, and people sign up and say, I want to run a match, and that's it. So we have club steel and Connex full of steel and a whole bunch of props out there. So
is it at the same location every time, or do you have different locations?
it is, yeah. It's at Cheyenne Mountain Shooting Range, which is actually on the east side of Fort Carson. So all the targets are on Fort Carson, but the whole facility is on Fort Carson, but it's open to the public. So we have to deal with, if, you know, when going down range, you have to wait till the range is cold for Fort Carson's purposes and whatnot. So
Tough to find land out there where you're at, where you can set targets up in it.
it is, yeah. I mean, the land doesn't have a lot of agricultural value or mineral value or anything like that. So it's land here. If somebody's got it, they're going to develop it. You know, Colorado Springs is where our shop's in Colorado Springs, and I live a little bit outside of Colorado Springs. It's a very rapidly growing city. So big pieces of property are generally owned by developers for future use or getting ready to be bought by developers.
So not a lot of land just sitting around doing nothing that you can talk somebody into putting targets on and turning into a lead farm.
Nope, not really. Not right now. Maybe 20 years ago it'd have been easier, but today it's pretty difficult.
Now, didn't you win the team tournament up there that I hosted in Colorado?
Yeah, Scott DiCaprio and I won that. So
That's right.
that was
Scott DiCaprio. I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I seem to remember that. That was actually where you and I met, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. There was I want to say that was a month before your PRS match up there.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember clearly you taking a shot at a KYL that I told you not to take a shot at.
I think your
And,
exact words were, even though you hit the target, it still was stupid.
Yeah, you actually, not only did you hit the target, but you actually won the match because you hit the target. And I said, I don't care about any of that. It was still a stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I think you know I was right. But
Yeah, but I'd take it again.
So you're
Yeah, I
a
know.
gambler.
Well, he set up this stage where you kind of had to shoot through tall grass, and everybody was shooting prone through the tall grass. And I set up on a tripod, and everybody was struggling. They could hit all the big targets, but nobody could hit the little targets. And so I set up on the tripod to kind of get above it. And I was on a pretty good run. So I was like, well, I mean, this may be the divider. You know, we knew that we had to beat, it was Wes Roland and Danny were in the lead after day one. And we knew that we were a few points behind them. So might have made all the difference in the world to take that shot. So I did.
Awesome.
it was impressive. How many? So trying to remember. How did you shoot? Did you shoot the PRS match when we had it up there?
I did, yeah.
Or how'd you do in that? I don't remember.
Not good. So I don't remember what I placed, but it wasn't very good. So
I had people livid with me about that match because there were targets that didn't have anything behind them. And I said, yeah, that was the purpose, was so that you didn't get any feedback, you know, and they just couldn't believe that you had set a target up where you didn't have any feedback from the bullet. I mean, they were angry, like, you know, that should never be allowed. And
Yeah.
that was pretty funny. But it definitely challenged people, I think.
yeah, I remember a few of those targets.
So Andy, Matt asked how many guys participate in all of y'all's club matches up there?
Depends on the match. I want to say on average, probably 40 to 60, maybe. So our group's grown pretty quickly. So we've got people that come down from northern Colorado and eastern Colorado. I don't know how far a lot of people drive, but a huge amount of the people come from the Denver area. So
What do you think we could do to make the club series better? What kind of improvements would you like to see or changes would you like to see in it?
ooh, man, that's a tough one. I don't know if I actually have a really good answer for that. I think every region's a little bit different and they all have their needs. The regions that have the best shooters generally are always the same regions. So they're obviously doing something right. I mean, we should look to groups like Oklahoma and Southeast kind of to understand what the map is for the shooters' purposes, but I'm not certain. I don't have a good answer. So it's
Y'all have a
Well-
lot of wins out there?
have what?
A lot of wins out there where y'all are?
No, it's not too windy. I mean, it can be pretty windy, but our air is really thin, so you don't hold for a lot of it. I want to say my house is at about 7,200 feet in altitude. So the range I think is at 6,000, 60, a little bit over 6,000 feet. So our density altitude in summer could be 10,000 feet.
Wow.
That, you know, you could feel like you have quite a bit of wind, hold off the edge of the plate and miss off that edge. Had that happen several times. So you kind of have to be conservative about your wind call. We do have tricky winds that change directions a lot. So
Yeah, that's not fun.
yeah.
Hey, I forgot to ask you a while ago, how many different products do you guys make currently?
So our primary products are scope rings and bottom metals, and muzzle brakes. We also do a bunch of stuff like followers and action screws and thread protectors and a whole bunch of little miscellaneous stuff. But predominantly it's bottom metals and scope rings and muzzle brakes.
I
So
didn't know you made thread protectors. I actually need some thread protectors, so we'll get together on that. It's something I've needed for a long time, and I just never have time to make my own. So it's not really.
yeah, I think that's. Go ahead. Sorry, what was that?
It's not cost effective for me to, you know, spend the time it takes for me to make one or two or three thread protectors. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You kind of got to set up a machine and let it go for a while. So
So about to say, I think volume is the key to anything that you're doing in this sport. It's
Mhm.
not really worth it to set the machines up just to do one or two of something. You've really got to have some volume.
yeah, I mean, there are some things that people charge a lot of money for, like steel bottom metals are quite pricey. I think that's a good market for low quantity work. We don't do steel bottom metals, but the people who do are pretty successful at it at a pretty good price. But most aluminum things, most of the stuff we do, we don't make a lot of money per part. So the goal is to make a lot of parts. So we really focus on the 90% portions of the market, stuff for Remingtons. And
Mhm.
so,
Greg, do you have any lives?
Richie said you guys did set up a great course of fire, and he comes down from Fort Collins to come shoot.
no.
And that's all I got over there.
So what are you running? What's your personal stock and rifle and all that? What are you running right now?
At the moment, my current match gun. I do run a variety of stuff, but right now I'm running an impact and a foundation with a zero compromise scope. I just got one of those new Collis DLRs to play with. I'm excited about that. So I change stuff around quite a bit, but I have been running an impact in my match gun for a few years. I've been running the foundation Exodus for a few years. Barrels, I use a lot of different barrels. I've got some proof research barrels and some benchmarks, and I try to know a little bit about everything. When people call to talk about a bottom metal or something, they may ask a question about another product, and if I have an answer, that's can be helpful. So I do change some of those products around a little bit here and there, but predominantly my match gun's been an impact and a foundation. I ran Schmidt's for a while. I have a Schmidt that I run still and a ZCO, and I got a new Collis to play with, and I've got some Vortexes. And so I kind of mix it up and match it around a little bit,
What caliber?
BR variants mostly. So I ran a BRX for a long time, and I switched over to a straight BR, and then I decided why not try BRA? I don't know. So
What is the difference between BRA and BRX?
BRX has a 30-degree shoulder like a BR, but it's blown forward. I think it's 100 thousandths, kind of like a dasher. The real reason for the BRA, I think, is the biggest merit for not a BRA, I'm sorry, a BRX, is you can go pick up your brass and you'll never confuse it with a dasher, a BRA, or a BR. It's the odd man out. So if you're the guy running a BRX, you'll always be able to find your brass. But I kind of just play with them all together, all of them, really.
How are you doing that? Are you taking a BR case and then just blowing it out 100 thousandths? What are you doing?
Right now, I'm running a BRA, and all I'm doing on that thing is I'm buying ammo from Clay Blackadder and shooting BR ammo through it, and it's fire forming. It shoots great, low SDs. So
Great.
So, and my current match gun's done by Travis Stevens, TS Customs. So
how much do you think is the Indian and how much is the Arrow? Like, do you think that having X, Y, or Z in your gun is going to affect performance, or do you think it's more the shooter practicing with what they have?
Well, I think it's mostly the shooter. The vast majority of it's the shooter. I think that trying to chase a performance number is a bad idea. I think that you pick an accuracy requirement that you want, and a bullet that you want, and a minimum speed, and make sure that that's like water safe, and you could shoot it in a downpour. And I think do that and life's good. I mean, I change stuff around just because I want to, and I want to see what the differences are, and I like being able to answer questions about it. But as far as the difference between the BRX versus the BR and the BRA, there's about 100 feet a second between all three of them, in my opinion. And it's not worth changing calibers to gain something. They're all very accurate, consistent, low SDs. I think the BR variants are very consistent. So
You hear a lot of people talk about calibers and chasing that caliber or chasing, you need to go with a dasher or a BR or this or that. And then you look at like little Allison Zane who's shooting a 6 Creed.
exactly.
And so maybe it's not so much about the caliber, but about how you shoot it. But
For sure.
You
Yeah.
want ever to agree this?
on her shoulders and say, well, I mean, I know my wind calls for a 6 Creed. Like she knows that caliber and she knows her dope for it. And so she doesn't want to change. So I think it's interesting.
See,
There's a lot of value in that.
I think the Indian needs to have a straight arrow, but it doesn't matter exactly what arrow it is. Like if you're shooting a gun that's shooting a 2-inch group at 100 yards, or a gun that's constantly, having malfunctions, or a gun with a 3-pound trigger, then that could be a hindrance. But as long as you have something that gets a decent velocity, shoots consistent and accurate, and doesn't break all the time, I think that's a requirement.
Yeah. Well, and use a bullet that I used to always say that if somebody hasn't won a national championship with that bullet, you might not want to try it, or that product altogether. And I think that there's a lot of merit in watching what top level shooters do. I'm not a good example. I change my stuff around a lot for different reasons, and I'm not out there winning matches. I'm just shooting and having a good time and and all that. But pay attention to these guys like Austin Orgain and Tate Streeter and Clay. Those guys, they win championships. They do well. And they're follow their example. They don't change their gear around a lot. They use what works and they run with it, and it worked out well for them.
Yep. I can't tell you how much I use the what the pros use over on the Precision Rifle blog when I was getting into this. If you're getting into this and you haven't been to the Precision Rifle blog and looked at some of what the pros use, it really does tell you all sorts of literally it's the top shooters from PRS and NRL, and it's like a list of like, this is what the for instance, scopes, the Attacker, the Razor HD Gen 2, and the Kahalas 5-25, they're like the top 3. And, if you have one of those, you're not going to go bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Back when they were, they did a big scope review and they reviewed all the top scopes. I remember that was a big deal. Anybody had taken all those products and lined them up side by side and rated them based on a lot of measurables. I feel like if they were to do it again, a lot of those scopes are better now than they would have been, because that kind of set a new standard. But you're right. The next series, what the pros use, every time the PRS finale would happen and they start publishing, you name it, powder, barrels, scopes, actions, triggers, whatever, there was a lot of good information to put on there. So
I feel like there didn't used to be a lot, or at least not as many choices as there are now.
yeah.
No, there used to be very few.
Yep. Speaking of choices, Mark asked if you had to pick one cartridge, though, what would it be, the 6BR or the 6BRA?
Well, if I had to pick one, it'd probably be the 6BR, to be honest. Not because there's anything wrong with the BRA, but the 6BR is very, very simple. So it's, I think Wade Studeville told me that this was when I switched to the BR. He said, if everybody would just use my load and load 105 hybrids at 2.4 inches and just shoot until they're in the top 10, all they'd be doing is learning. And I was like, there's a lot of wisdom in that.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime Wade speaks, you probably should listen.
Mm-hmm.
Every time Wade speaks, I try to listen. Yeah. So it doesn't mean I actually act, but I do listen.
Yeah.
So how has the climate of everything right now, politically and I mean, so many things have happened politically with the election, and then everything that's happened with coronavirus and with supply chains. You know, we had like the Suez Canal where you couldn't get stuff through there. A lot of supply chain interruptions. What has that done to y'all's business? Have you seen more demand for firearms, or have you seen less demand for it because people can't get the components? How's it affecting y'all?
It's increased the demand significantly. I don't even know how much it's increased. I mean, I wish I could throw a number at it. It's significant. We've run out of nearly everything. We've hired a bunch of people. We've bought extra equipment. We've done a lot to try to keep up with the demand. We're still out. You know, it's very frustrating for the end user who wants to go buy a product and have it be available because they have to wait. Lead times have increased. So there's, you know, constant supply of people looking for their products they have on order. So I mean, we're putting out way more product than we ever have. We've got more people, more equipment, more floor space, the whole bit. And it's, you know, it's still tough to keep up with the demand right now. So it's been quite a challenge.
So I want to back up. I want to back up here for a minute. So we were talking about scopes and the Precision Rifle blog and what the pros use and all that. And I'm going to tell you a story, and it's absolutely hand on the Bible, true story. I'm not going to give you names or brands or any of this, but I was sitting at a table at a match with some other guys, and the representative that was there for a certain scope company sat down, and the shooter sitting next to me was sponsored by that company, and he said, "I've got a couple of scopes that need to go back with you," meaning they were broken. And then another sponsored shooter from that same company walked up, and he said, "Hey, I've got 3 or 4 scopes that need to go back with you," which means they were broken. So that one company between those 2 shooters, I think, had 5 or 6 broken scopes. And that would be a scope company that would do fairly well in what the pros use thing. So I'm going to tell you that you have to be careful about that. The pros use to some degree what they are given for free and or get paid to use. I'm not saying it's not good stuff, but I'm not saying that. I am saying that just because the pros use it, it does not mean it cannot have problems, because everything can have problems, especially when it comes to scopes. There has never been a scope brand that has not had failures and different problems. So to some degree, be a little cautious with just assuming because the pros use something. Where I think you benefit on that sort of stuff really is more about caliber. You start looking at the actions, you start looking at the barrel brands, things like that. You'll start to see some pretty important stuff because there's not really failures involved in those things. But some of the peripheral stuff you kind of got to be a little bit careful about, because you're not always getting the whole story on the real performance of that stuff. I have another buddy who was given a scope by a person, from a scope company. And it failed at the first match he used it at. They gave him another scope and it failed at the next match he used it at. And he said, "No, thank you. I don't want any more of your scopes." And scopes tend to be more of an issue than a lot of other products. Anyway, that's kind of my pet peeve is people that assume that because a certain brand is popular among the professional shooters that it's trouble free. It doesn't mean it's a piece of junk, but there are no trouble free products when it comes to optics. So.
That's true. Yeah, well, I mean, everybody has product failures. Sometimes it's just, something broke, something wore out, whatever. I do think that the overall quality of the scopes that we see on the market today is a lot higher than it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
A lot less product failures and just overall, I feel like for your money, you can go get a really good scope for not a lot of money these days. And there's a lot of good options. So
I agree.
And that's both, probably my favorite new realm of the scope market is kind of this, I call it the NRL 22 driven scopes. The whole point of that is to, get people out shooting for something somewhat affordable. And you got all this stuff hitting the market, the Athlon Argos, BTR, the Vortex Diamondback, the Strike Eagle, and then the new Venom. all of these $300, $400, $500, $600 scopes that, I may not want to use that for a 2-day PRS match that's going to cost me, an easy $1,000 to shoot. I may not want to take that to, on a $8,000 trophy hunt, but to go and shoot a little NRL 22, an NRL 22 match or something, local like that, where you want the full features, but don't need the quality of a, $1,800 or a $3,800 scope. You can get something that'll do what you need. Obviously not as good as a Razor or an Attacker, but at a good price.
So Andy, how do you feel about the whole 22 match phenomenon that's going on? That's the growth in that. What do you think about that whole deal?
Well, I think it's great. It's a great place for people to get started. I'd say 22s are great on a budget, but we all know that everybody who's into 22s is running an expensive 22 that costs just as much as a regular match gun. So yeah, exactly. Right there, Greg's.
Yeah, the plan here, the gun was like $699, and I was like, yep, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get one of those Cronus BTRs on it. I'm gonna be good. It's gonna be like a sub $1,000 rifle. Well, there's a $400 bipod on it. I don't even know how much that chassis costs. We ended up with a PST Gen 2 on it, and it just kind of spiraled out of control. The suppressor's not on it right now, but that also was picked up because of that gun. It was really fun and really worth it though.
Andy,
Yeah, absolutely.
Andy, do y'all make any products specifically for the 22 market yet?
No, I mean, our bottom metals work for 22. As soon as Voodoo came out with their 22, I got one immediately. As soon as it was a thing that I knew would drop into a regular stock, I got it. I think that would have been in 2017, into 2017, early 2018, to early 2018. I think I got it. So I made sure a bottom metal worked with the Voodoo mags. And that was one of the first things we did. Checked it on pillars, made sure it worked in my foundation stock. And, kind of went all in on the rimfire thing. I don't shoot a lot of rimfire matches, but I do have a full rimfire course in the backyard. So when it's match season and rimfire ammo is available, I shoot a lot. And so I do anytime that there's a revision in magazines or something that happens with rimfires, we make sure our bottom metals are compatible and feeding works good. And, there's a fair amount of need there for making sure that rimfires feed well, because they don't feed well. They peel little pieces of bullets off, and next thing you know, they're less accurate or, have other issues. So, I try to stay as up on it as I can. So if there's ever, people have questions about something, we kind of get the ball rolling on it and start working on it. So from a bottom metal perspective, I think people really want to have a 22 that mirrors their match gun. So if you're going to run a MPA chassis, you're going to put your rimfire in an MPA chassis. You want to, you kind of want it to be the same thing. When rimfire ammo was really available, I would switch my gear around, pull my scope off my match gun and put it on my rimfire, and put my barreled action in my stock that I was going to use. I mean, even as far as taking the trigger out of my match gun and putting it in there just to make sure I was running the same trigger during training leading up to a big match like in 2018 going into the finale. That was one of the things that I did was I put everything in my rimfire for about a month and shot every single day, shooting paper dot drills on barricades at 50 yards just as a training aid, trying to work out little quirks and bugs and whatever in my own shooting. So I think they're very, very valuable for that.
So it's got to be pretty tough to stay on all of the changes in the market, because you guys build a lot of products for a lot of different, or you build products for a lot of different applications. So how do you stay on top of where all these companies are going and what you're going to need to, how do you try to stay on top of what you're going to need to build a year from now or 2 years from now?
I mean, that's kind of a tough question. I don't know if I have a good answer. I really pay attention. I listen to a lot of people. When I talk to people and they say that they have needs, and we focus on them. Our biggest segment of the market for us is probably the hunting market. So that's always about lightweight, you know, trying to always make sure that we have a product that hits those lightweight mountain rifles. And, you know, we try to innovate. Like we recently came out with we call it a 100 DBM. It looks like an Oberdorf DBM, you know, it's got the magazine release inside the trigger bow, and it's lighter and sleeker and everything else than a standard detachable box mag system. But it looks like it belongs on an expensive hunting rifle, you know, and a DBM is more of a function, like our standard tactical DBM is more of a function item. You know, it doesn't have to look really good. I mean, that's beneficial, but it has to function, you know, whereas hunting stuff, somebody spends $6,000 to $10,000 on a hunting rifle, they want it to really look the part. And that's kind of what we focus on. So we make we call them a hybrid ring, or we call them a long range hybrid ring, and they're a direct mount scope ring that bolts to the top of a round receiver. So could go on a factory Remington, or could go on a Lone Peak Razor. Impact's coming out with a round action. I asked Tate today if I could mention that while talking about this. And, you know, so it'll be round, lighter weight, really more geared for hunting. So that's like a 4-ounce set of rings that bolts directly on. It's 25 MOA built into it, has a bubble level on top. It's all cut out of billet, looks good, functions well, gives you the 25 MOA you need without having a Picatinny rail or any additional weight. You know, that's a huge portion of our market, is trying to stay relevant in that industry, because that industry it's very big. There's a lot of people who hunt a lot, and, you know, they want their hunting rifle to look a certain way and function a certain way. So
Yeah, that's a market I've never really gotten involved in because I've never had to. But down here where I'm located now, that's probably a direction that I'm going to end up having to go to some degree or another. So I'll get with you on ordering some stuff.
sounds good.
Are there any lives, Greg?
We are good on lives right now. Do you see the firearms industry changing at all over the next few years, just based off of what we're seeing here recently?
Yeah, I'm sure it will change. You know, the bolt gun industry has been very stable. I think it's been on a stable, like, growth curve. More match shooters, more hunters. You know, it's been going in a healthy direction for a long time. Right now, it's a little crazy, and I think that it's hard to tell what's going to happen because of right now. And there's a whole bunch of new firearms owners. I think there's a lot of new hunters, a lot of new match shooters, people who've never owned firearms getting into this, and, you know, the availability of some of the factory guns, you know, became lower. So the custom rifle market probably spiked as a result. As far as in the next few years, I don't see it going away for a while. I mean, it seems like it's going to be good and stable for a while. I think the gas gun industry is it's kind of always in some state of up or down. You know, it's either going up or going down. Put politics, whatever. But you know, I don't think people hate bolt guns quite the same. So, you know, I think everybody's they either don't care about them or they don't like them because it's a gun. But beyond that, you know, I think everybody's okay with hunting rifles and competition guns. Even in places that are not super gun friendly, like Sweden. You know, when I went to Sweden and shot a Viking Rifle Series match, everybody wanted to ask questions about my gun. You know, what are you doing? Are you shooting a match? Oh, great. How, you know, when I was done, how'd it go? Did you do well? You know, it was not a very gun friendly environment for gun owners. It was really kind of difficult to get the process rolling. You know, a lot of paperwork involved and whatever else, but, you know, I don't know what the average Swedish person's opinion is of firearm ownership, but I would say that it's not as positive in the United States, but people were enthusiastic because it was competition. So
I thought they were really all pro gun over there in Sweden for some reason. That surprises me.
I don't
thought
know if
they
they're
were
all.
a gun country.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a license. I know that to own a gun, and so there's a lot of people who hunt in Sweden. So I don't know the exact gun ownership numbers, but you guys had Marcus Olson on at one point. I'm sure he could probably be a much better expert about that, being Swedish. But
Let's see, I remember him talking about it, but we had so many different countries on that show. I'm trying to remember what he said.
Yeah, I can't remember what the laws were over there. I know they were a little pickier than here for sure, but
yeah, well, I had to get a letter to prove that I could own a gun here, there, and that's actually a really difficult thing to do because they want your local law enforcement to basically write you a letter saying you're allowed to own a gun. You can't just show up with the Constitution and say, here it is. You actually have to get them to do that. So you call the ATF and they're like, sorry, that's not our department. And you call your local sheriff and they're like, yeah, you didn't want to call a CBI or the FBI or, whatever. So you get this wild goose chase force agencies to get them to give you a letter saying you're allowed to own a gun.
that's crazy.
So
That's hilarious.
You can't.
I want to say it took a few weeks to get that squared away. So
Oh, that's the thing I love about where I live. I feel like I could go down there to the sheriff's office out in Columbia County, and they just laugh and be like, yeah, sure, here you go.
yeah, it's just sketch it down on a notepad. Here you go.
Yeah.
Here it is. Yeah, it was not that easy for us. So it's tough, but
How hard was it to get into the country with the rifle as far as getting through customs and all that?
so getting into Sweden was pretty easy, but we had a layover in England. We flew Norwegian airline, took the whole family with. So we have 3 kids, my wife and I, and 2 kids. And so we flew Norwegian Airlines, and for whatever reason, Norwegian didn't flag that being a gun. So when we landed in England for a layover, they ran that thing through the scanner and they're like, oh no, somebody's trying to smuggle a gun into England. And so and they tried calling me. Well, my phone was off. And so they tried paging me over the intercom, and that didn't work because there's, 20,000 people running around Gatwick Airport.
Mhm.
And so when I finally turned my phone on, I had a voicemail. So I called them back and to go to security and additional stuff. Had to wait for the London Police Department to show up and inspect my gun. And they were all enthusiastic about it and excited about it. But that was an hour of my life back while sitting there waiting for them. So that was interesting. I would say that if you have a layover somewhere going overseas with a gun, you probably ought to make sure you have more than an hour just in case the local police department has to go investigate what you've got, because you're probably not going anywhere until they do.
You said something about your kids. Tell us a little bit about your family. You've got 3 kids. Are they boys or girls? How old are they?
I have 2 boys and a girl. My boys are 12, 8, and my daughter is 5. She's going to be 5 in November.
Are
So-
they, have you got them involved in shooting yet? Got the boys involved in shooting?
A little bit. Drew, my oldest, he's shot a bit. We've gone and shot a club match together in a 22 match, and they shoot a little bit here and there. I took them the boys goose hunting last year. So my oldest, he gets to go big game hunting this year. So the laws in Colorado have changed from 14 to now 12. So, it's exciting and fun, but as far as match shooting, there's not always a lot of time. And if they get really interested in it, we'll start doing more of it. But, I don't want to burn them out on it. So it's kind of when they get the bug. And right now 22 ammo is so hard to get. I'm not pushing it at all. So I bought a couple over and under shotguns, a 28 and a 410. And every time I go into Walmart, if I see shotgun shells, I buy them just in case. So hopefully this summer we can go shoot some clays or, do something like that. So
I'll give you a life hack. Does CCI standard velocity shoot good out of your rifle?
I've never even tried it.
So for me, it shoots probably 95 to 98% as good as Lapo Center X, but it's
Okay.
like under half the cost. Go on to CCI's website any morning. I've bought ammo at 6 a.m., 8 a.m. They've been pretty good recently, and it's a pretty decent ammo.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah, I didn't even know. I'll go take a look. You better cut that out of the video so nobody else finds out.
Before I announced it on the show, I'm good on ammo for the rest of the year.
Yeah, don't be telling all the secrets, dude.
Yeah, that's right.
Listen, I feel like anybody that takes the time out of their evening to hang out with us and watch our show, they watch us to get information. So if there's anything that I can pass on to help our awesome loyal viewers enjoy shooting more, I'm gonna do it. After I
That's a
buy
great tip.
ammo and
Yeah, after your cart's full.
yeah. I'm about to say I might have bought like 2,000 before I said this on the show.
So Andy, if somebody was getting their first precision rifle, like I remember when I was first getting into this, I did not know what to buy. I didn't know where to go. So if somebody was just getting into precision rifle shooting and wanted to get their first rifle, what advice would you give them, or how would you steer them as to what to buy?
Well, oh man, that's tough. I would say, as always, buy once, cry once. Don't think about the price tag on certain things. Get the item you want. You know, get an item that's proven. Actions versus if you're buying an action. There are a lot of phenomenal actions out there. Pick one that people are doing really well with. Pick one that supports the industry. Impact, Lone Peak, Defiance, Curtis. They all, people win championships with those actions. They're great actions. They're well represented. They sponsor stuff. They put stuff on prize tables. They support the industry very well. The shooting industry, the competitive shooting industry. And, pick one of those. And I sell products to a whole bunch of different action manufacturers and I use a lot of different actions for a lot of different things. I have a lot of actions personally. But I would say don't go out and try something that you've never even heard of. Just pick the things that work and go with it. It's not about, you're not going to find an item that is going to suddenly outperform, make you win. It can stop you from winning, but it's not going to make you win. So that goes with everything. Your stock, your chassis, your scope rings, your whatever, right? There are proven good products out there, and pick one, pick one that's been proven and it's done well. And, people have done good with it. That's my advice. Don't look at the price tag, just make sure that it's consistent and people are doing well with it regularly before you buy it.
Buy once, cry once.
Yep, exactly. And I think that crosses over into everything. That's reloading components and barrels and optics and the whole bit. Your gun, which trigger you use, all of that stuff. It's and there's a whole lot of really good products out there. I feel like it's harder now to sort out through your products than it was 5 years ago, because there's more options and people are doing really well with them. But that would be my piece of advice. Don't go run the math on your load data and your cartridge and be like, well, if I can go 3,200 feet a second with this ultra high BC bullet, I'm going to win every match. It's not how it works. It's consistency. And honestly, I don't see a downside to running it slow. Running stuff slower is generally better. It's easier to see your bullets impact, or your bullet fly through the air, whatever. All of that is easier at a slower velocity. I recently actually I started playing with a 6 arc. I'm going to waste a whole bunch of time. I'm sorry. And I'm shooting 103 vapor trails. Tom Jacobs makes a phenomenal bullet. If you guys have never used them, they hold world records in bench rest and stuff. And I'm running them out of a 6 arc at like 27-30, and they're amazing. They shoot all in the same hole. It's easy to see the bullets hit. There's absolutely no recoil. It's a phenomenal kind of thing, I think that to run it slow and steady and accurate will always prove better. So that's another piece of advice. Just don't be afraid you're going to run it too slow. That will not cost you any points.
Yeah, my last match that I shot, David McNeil had told me how good his 6 Creedmoor I'd built him was shooting. And he said, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but run that 6 Creedmoor at around 2850. And I did. And that was the best shooting combination I've ever shot in all the years I've been doing this. I saw every impact. There was no recoil. And it shot literally when I went to side end, it shot 2 rounds through the same hole. I mean, it was just, the whole thing was just better. And I agree. I wish I had figured that out years ago, but slower is definitely usually the way to go.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the trend of people's velocities over the last couple of years, I would say in like 2016 or 17, when people started getting into 6 millimeters from 6.5s, they were all running them at 3,100 feet a second, killing barrels in 800 rounds, 900 rounds. They've slowly crept that down, then they got down around 3,000 and 2,900. And now, I mean, there's people running stuff in national level matches in the low 27s, in 6 millimeters, and doing very, very well with it. Who knows where the bottom really is? I mean, we've yet to see. I mean, in a few years, we might be like, man, I can't believe they're running stuff at that kind of speed, but.
So I just ran out of powder, so I got to redevelop a new load. And yeah, I think my next load is going to be a little bit slower. I was shooting like just barely shy of 3,000. It's like, maybe I'll bring this down to like 28, save a little bit of powder, kind of make it last.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how much you like shooting it when you slow it way down.
Maybe keep the primers in the pocket.
Yeah.
They don't need to come out on their own.
Mine, like, I got a couple where I just like shake the case and the primer pops out. I'm trying to filter through that brass now. But no, my whole first season, I was shooting a 6.5 at 28. And, I was so much slower than everybody else. But I mean, that gun was a hammer. It was ridiculously consistent. But yeah, I'm also enjoying this, like, just shoot a laser beam at the target thing I'm doing now.
Yeah. Well, if you're having fun, that's all that matters, right?
Yep. So during our buy once, cry once discussion, Eddie said he buys and cries often, but he knows it's quality.
Yeah, good.
I don't know if I told this story last week or not, or I don't think I've told you guys this story, but I had a customer that sent me a bunch of parts that he had purchased, and it was an action from a manufacturer who's no longer in business. I had never heard of it. It was actually a Winchester style action. And, it looked okay. I did my thing, figured out what the tenon length ought to be. And I cut the barrel and I went to screw it on the barrel and it got about, 150 thousandths from the end. It wouldn't screw on any further. And I was like, So I get to looking, and well, they had not machined the internal threads on the tenon all the way to the back. And there was also, what they had tried to do was create an action that only they could build barrels for. And I had spent some time and figured out how I could cut the barrel to make it fit. But I had not figured in on the fact that they had not threaded it all the way to the back of the tenon. And then even with it 150 thousandths from touching the barrel, I could see that the face of the action was way out of square. And so I called the guy and said, look, I'm not using this. This company, I checked, the company was out of business. And I said, I won't use this action. And he said, that's fine. And so I actually kind of pulled some strings. He was a Marine Scout sniper. So I pulled some strings and got him an action at a really good price. And, Yeah, anybody who builds stories has got, or builds guns got stories like that, but it's there's a lot more poor quality stuff on the market that I think most people would really believe. I may have told the story before about the Remington 700 action that I went to put a scope rail on and I couldn't get one of the fourth screw in, and I finally took the scope rail off and started fiddling with it. When I finally got the screw in, it was drilled at a 30-degree rearward angle, and so just there's a lot of stuff like that out there. But you mentioned most of the really good companies, and I don't like to see people changing from a Defiance to an Impact to a Curtis. I mean, once you get a good solid action, start spending your money on shooting and training and going to the range. So that's just my opinion.
So Paul, do you have a tip of the week this week?
We can talk about this. I couldn't figure out a way technically to make this into a chart where you guys can see it, but I think you'll understand what I'm saying. There's a difference between knowing your data, knowing your dope for your rifle, and really understanding it. And if you look at the splits, and I call it the splits, I don't know what the actual name of it is, but I named it the splits because that kind of made sense to me. So what I mean by that is the amount that your dope increases on a 25-yard basis, say from 200 to 400, it's usually going to be like 0.15 or something with a 6 Creedmoor. Once you get out to about 400 or 500, it's going to go to about 0.2 for a 6 Creedmoor or 6 millimeter, most of the 6 millimeter stuff. The difference between 500 and 600 yards is going to be right in the middle. The difference between 600 and 700 yards is going to be right in the middle. And then after that, it's going to go to about 1.3. And then after that's going to go to about 1.6. But the way that if you'll look at that and you'll look at how those 25-yard increments increase in different segments. So they'll kind of stay the same for 300 or 400 yards in the first part of your dope. And then the middle part from 500 to say 700, 800, they're going to stay pretty close. And if you'll memorize your splits in 25-yard increments, then there's a really cool thing that happens. If you're forced to change rifles or you're forced to change calibers, all you really have to do is know your original dope and your original splits, and then just look at the difference. So when I teach classes, I can always pretty well tell my students what their dope is going to be, regardless of what they're shooting. 300 Win Mag, 308, 6 Creedmoor, 6 BR, it doesn't matter, because I know what the split difference is. In other words, I know that from 500 to 800 yards with a 308, it's not going to be 0.2, it's going to be 0.3, then it's going to be 0.4, then it's going to be 0.5 or 6. So I don't have to memorize anything else. I'm not actually worried about what the 308 dope is. I'm worried about what the difference between the dope that I have memorized, frontwards and rearwards, because it's my dope, which would be, any of the 6 millimeter calibers running about, 2,900 feet per second. If you've got that memorized and you just know the split difference between that, whatever other caliber you're using, you can pretty well in your head come up with any dope at any distance. It's on a percentage basis. It's not that hard to calculate. So I would also say that on a point that Andy brought up earlier, people use ballistic computers, they use their kestrels, but they don't really use them. They look at them and it tells them how much to dial on the scope, and that's really the end of what they're doing with them. But those things will teach you a whole lot more than that. And Andy brought up a good point a while ago, is guys will change from a 105 to a 115, or from a 105 to a 107 that's got a slightly better BC. Well, you can use that if you'll print out, or if you'll write out a ballistic chart with the 105, and then the ballistic chart with whatever it is you're going to change to, whether it's a different bullet or a different speed. I think in most cases you're going to see that you're gaining almost nothing. You're gaining 1/4 of a tenth of a mil at 1,000 yards, or you're gaining a tenth of a mil at 1,000 yards, and that's in a 30-mile-an-hour wind. I mean, you're going to have to get up to 20 to 30-mile-an-hour winds before you're going to see hardly any difference in the ability of between, you know, a lighter bullet, a heavier bullet, or between a rifle that's running 2,800 feet per second, one that's running 2,900 feet per second. I can tell you that once you get over 3,000 feet per second, a 6mm rifle, there is a very steep curve as far as barrel life. In other words, the barrel life at 3,000 feet per second may be 2,000 rounds, just as an example. You go to 3050 and it might be 1,400. You go to 3,100, it might be 800. So, you know, things like that. And if you look at the ballistic difference and what you're gaining, I promise you there's just nothing there. And what you're going to end up having is you're going to get an undesirable recoil pulse. You're going to start getting ammunition that's very sensitive to temperature. When you start loading your ammo up there at the higher end of the range, it becomes very temperature sensitive, and you'll start to see your SD swing with temperature changes more. I've talked about this before, but it's because it's one of those things that on paper is really attractive. It really draws people in because they think there's some magic there. And man, having done pretty much everything there is to do, I'm telling you that exactly what Andy said is I found the exact same thing. Is when you get a nice slow, no recoil, no variation in your speed. I had ESs using Hornady brass. I had ES of like 7, you know, because I'm running at 2,800 feet per second. So, you know, memorize your dope. You're going to memorize your dope. If you're going to be a competitive precision rifle series shooter, you're going to memorize your dope. It's just a matter of when you're going to do it. After it costs you points or before it costs you points. But you're going to memorize it, and at some point it's going to save your butt because you're going to lose a card, or you know, you're going to write a number down wrong or something. And so don't just memorize it, but understand it. Understand how that dope changes every 25 yards, and then you'll start to get a real understanding of the value of changing a bullet, or the value of changing 100 feet per second. Or another thing I get a lot is barrel length. People think that to go from a 24-inch barrel to a 25-inch barrel, you're going to pick up 100 feet per second or something. It just doesn't work that way. Now, barrel length is certainly as you lose barrel, you lose velocity, but it's the same thing. You might lose 35 feet per second going from 25 to 24. You might lose 135 feet per second going from 24 to 23, and you might lose 250 feet per second going the next inch. So it's not a linear curve, I guess is what you would say, if that's even a term. But anyway, that's kind of my tip for the week is use your ballistic computer to analyze and to research the changes that you're looking at making your equipment, and try running your 6mm down around 2850. And I think you'll be a whole lot happier with the way everything goes and the consistency, and you'll get longer brass life, and you'll get longer barrel life. So that's this week's tip from a guy who's made way more mistakes than he should have.
Derek said he's shooting a 6 Creedmoor at 2870, and he loves that seed.
Yep.
Well, you know, if I can add on to that point.
Yeah.
Your flight time on your bullet. I mean, it's, let's say, you know, to a 400-yard target, I don't know what the flight time is, but, you know, if you're shooting, most of our positional stages, I'd say, are like 400 to 600 yards. The amount of time that bullet is in the air, the longer it's in the air, the more time you have to reacquire your target. So if you go from 3,000 feet a second to 2,700 feet a second, you gained 10% flight time, or you have 10% more flight time. Well, if you're only seeing the last 10% of the bullet's flight to begin with, less, now you see you're back on target in the same amount of time or less. So you may go from seeing 5 to 7% of your flight time up to 50 to 70% of your flight time just by dropping it down 300 feet a second. It makes a huge difference for what you see downrange. I know if I run something around 3,000 feet a second, I catch the aftermath of the bullet hitting, and I rarely ever catch the actual impact. It's usually a swinging target or a plume of dust. It's very difficult sometimes to decipher what I actually saw downrange. But When I slow it way down, it makes a big difference. So
That brings up a good point. That was another tip that I was going to give last week and I forgot. If you fire a shot at a target and you don't see anything, the target doesn't move and you don't see any dust and there should be dust, typically what you've done is you've gone right over the top of the target. And I mean, barely, and you've landed behind the target and you can't see where the bullet's impacted. So that can be really confusing when you fire a shot and you don't see anything. You get no feedback whatsoever. But, you know, typically if you fire and you don't see anything and you need to make an adjustment, I would adjust down, at least initially. If you got your dope squared away the way that you should have, then you shouldn't be having these problems. But, you know, if you're going to have to master your velocity. Until you absolutely master your velocity, you are never going to be competitive, even at an amateur level in long range shooting. That is really the first thing that has to happen before anything else happens. When you miss, it's got to be more wind or less wind. It can't be that I shoot high, low, left or right. That is a 360-degree guessing game, and you will never win that game. And it will be, you know, I spent the first few years doing that, and it was not a lot of fun. I would miss, and I would have no idea why I missed. You can't learn anything that way. If you don't get any feedback from the bullets, you don't learn anything. Every time you hit a target, you learn something. Every time you miss a target, you learn something. If you don't get either one of those things, if you don't know whether you hit it or missed it or why you missed it or where you missed it, then you're not gaining any knowledge out of it. So it's really can get really frustrating really quick. So.
Yep. So, Andy, what upcoming matches, projects, and goals do you have both for yourself and Hawkins Precision?
Well, I'm kind of taking the summer off of shooting. I've got a match. Well, after the next one, I'm going to the Night Force CLR match in Wyoming in a few weeks. I shot that last year. It's a ton of fun. I don't remember what the average target distance was, but it was like 1,400 yards or something. Nothing but 4 target troop lines in Wyoming in the wind. It was a good time. The wind was up to 50 miles an hour at some point.
Wow.
So it was a lot of fun. It was, you know, a big challenge. You know, the points are not, it's not like it's a series or anything. So you don't have to, if you completely tank the match, it is what it is. You learned something, but that's my only match for the summer. I'm going to go camping and, you know, hang out with my family and take a summer away from shooting. I haven't done that in a few years. Most of the time I do trade shows in the beginning of the year, you know, January, February, March, and all that stuff got canceled this year. So I started shooting early. I shot a match in January and another one in March and April, May, I think. So I've got 4 matches done this year so far. Take the summer off and then go shoot again in September and October. Hopefully qualify for the finale. If I don't, then oh well. As far as the business goals, you know, just try to keep making new products, getting stuff delivered on time, helping people. I know people are trying to get their components and the industry's tough. So we're going to keep growing and hiring and buying equipment and trying to do what we can to keep up with the demand. And with a little bit of spare time, try to come out with some new stuff that's better, because yesterday's awesome. It's just today's average. So you're not trying to be better. It's not, you're not doing well.
So what caliber are you shooting? What caliber are you shooting in that extended long range stuff?
A 7 SOM. I shot it last year. I shot 180 hybrids last year. Shot it at 2,800 feet a second. I think everybody thought I was crazy because most people are running them a lot faster, but out of 200 shooters, I was an 18th. I was pretty happy. I felt like the wind was beating me up pretty bad, but it held its own. So when you're dealing with 8 mils of wind, what's 9, right? So, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. I like the 7 SOM. It's really consistent. It's like a big BR variant. I've shot H1000 out of it. I was playing around with 4350. It shoots good. Shoots good no matter what you feed it. 180 hybrids are great bullets. They've got a high BC. If you run them kind of slow, you see a lot of trace, and it gives you a little bit of time to watch for the big plume of dust when you miss or the impact. So
Don't say that now.
yeah, well, I mean, you're gonna miss some, so you can't control that. So
Speaking of H4350, this has been a little bit of a dilemma for me. I have 8 pounds of H4350 that I really don't have any use for. And I really don't know whether I can bring myself to let it go at the current market price. I mean, even though I know I can get current market price, I'm not sure how I feel about doing that. But anyway, I guess if somebody gets in a real bind, you can contact me. Maybe we can figure something out. But I've really struggled with, I just don't ever want to feel like I'm taking advantage of somebody. But at the same time, it's, if you can't find it and you need it, then it's worth what it's worth. So I don't know, maybe I might part with it.
somebody out there's in a big bind and needs it bad. I bet your inboxes are.
I jokingly refer to it as my retirement plan.
Yeah.
I figure I really plan to hold out until I can get a 3-bedroom condo for it, but we're pushing that direction, but we're not there yet. So
Now you're probably at about a 2-bedroom right now.
yeah, or for enough lumber to build a house, it's worth about the same amount as enough lumber to build a house.
Right.
I'm not sure if you know the cost of lumber.
Yeah,
I would-
lumber's gotten super ridiculously expensive.
Yeah,
wouldn't
I'm
want-
aware.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of lumber, 1 piece of concrete board, and a piece of trim for $85 on Saturday.
Yeah, people are starting to frame houses with steel because it's cheaper than wood.
Yep. We had hurricane damage. I've had to buy a lot of wood this year, and it's I was going to buy a 1x2. Now 1x2 is not a very big piece of wood the other day, and it was 10 foot long, and Home Depot wanted $17 for a 1x2. But I said, no,
What's
I
it
don't
mean?
think-
What? Like just regular 1x2?
Yeah, just a regular 1x2. Yeah. So anyway, I guess if we're talking about wood, it's probably time to wrap things up.
I was about to say, do you got any lives, Greg?
Oh yeah.
So Derek said that he switched from H4350 to Shooter's World long rifle, and he should have switched years ago. Derek, I totally agree with you. Now that I'm out of my Shooter's World precision, I'm going back to my long rifle. It did really, really well for me with my 6.5. Also, Scott Jones said he'll take your powder if you want to sell it to him. And then take
Andy?
one.
Andy, I want to thank you for coming, sharing.
Thanks
your
for having
story
me.
tonight. So, and I appreciate you stopping by and seeing my wife and I when you were in town. So,
Yeah, thanks for having us. I had a great time.
yeah. So,
Well, we'll start with some shout outs. So Greg, why don't you go with those?
All right, so I'm going to start off with shouting out to Bagara. Earlier in the season, I shot an NRL 22X, and I won this awesome B14R, and it just came in, and she's super beautiful. Can't wait to go take this thing out to the range. GSL suppressors. Ooh, we're going to do this close up here. Let's see. Ooh, beautiful. She's super quiet. I can shoot her in my backyard. Shooters and Sharpshooters of Augusta, our local indoor and outdoor ranges. PDC Custom, the most beautiful rifle chassis known to man back here. Available in lime green and normal human colors. Shooter's World powder. Like I said, it's just great stuff. I've never had any issues out of it. It's gotten me ridiculously low SDs and ESs, and the gun shoots a heck of a lot better than me with that powder. Hunter's HD Gold. I am blind as a bat, but not when I'm wearing that. Fix-It sticks. For those of you that know me, like on a more personal level, I'm a kind of a whore for really nice tools. And I'm absolutely in love with my Fix-It sticks. If you're interested in them, hit me up. I might have some discount codes to share. And Bortec, some other like super, super high-end bougie tools to keep your rifle nice and clean. If you use them, they don't keep the rifle clean if you just keep the stuff in a cabinet. You actually have to take it out and like do stuff with a gun with it.
How about you, Paul?
I want to go ahead and announce that next week we are going to have Val Latu, who is the owner and founder of Valdata Optics, on the show. He is, I would say he and I are friends, but we're really more like family. He came here in 1984 to the United States from communist Romania. And he came here with $150 in his pocket, and his story of how he came here and what he did once he got here to survive and, to build an optics company is pretty amazing. And you will not meet a more patriotic human being. He and another friend of ours, Glenn James, were actually in Washington the day the riots occurred. They left about 3 o'clock. But he and Glenn drove up there because you will not meet a guy who loves America more than Val Latu does. So I would strongly encourage you guys to watch next week, and you will hear a guy who appreciates just how good this country really is. So
That's awesome. Any other shout outs? Are you good?
I guess he's good. He's gone to sleep.
Andy, do you have any shout outs?
I could probably spend a whole lot of time giving shout outs. I don't have any that are off the top of my head right now. Just like to thank all my customers, anybody who supports us, use products, and thank you guys for having me on here. And I just appreciate it.
And what's your website again?
www.hawkinsprecision.com.
Awesome. So people can go and order some stuff from you.
That's right. We don't make muzzle loaders. So
All right. Well, we want to
Hawkins muzzle loaders. So we get that call every now and then. So
hilarious. Yeah, not your thing.
no, not our thing.
Well, I want to thank you, like Paul said, for coming on and spending 2 hours of your evening with us almost, talking it up. So thank you for taking the time and doing that, and for everything that you do for our industry. We appreciate it. And with that, that will be a wrap for episode 338 of the Shooter's Mindset. We'll see y'all next week.